This is the Leave Your Legacy podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Leave Your Legacy podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Chris Norris, alongside RJ Messenger. RJ, we are sitting in the studio. We've got a big box of Lysol wipes next to us.
We do.
We're in the middle of a legit pandemic right now, but we're still doing our 4th episode here.
Yeah.
We're not
going to stop us.
No way.
We got to stop us from getting in the booth.
Times are crazy right now with everything that's going on in our world, but we really want to still make this podcast a priority. We've already met some great people, heard some great stories, interviewed some awesome folks, have big plans for the podcast. Any feedback you've heard so far, RJ, about what we've been doing here on the Leave Your Legacy podcast in your inner circle?
All positive stuff so far.
Cool.
I think that the reason behind why we did this in the first place is kind of starting to pay off. Does that make sense? You know, people are reaching out saying, hey, you know, can't wait for your next podcast. I had someone reach out to me and on the first podcast say that they were emotional at the end of it. And that's pretty insane to think about. Just our two dumbasses talking.
Yeah. It's not about us.
Well, my dumbass and you're kind of smart. But,
no, I'm looped in.
But yeah, I think that I'm happy with the plays that we've had, the video, plays on YouTube. We really don't push the YouTube ones too much. But so far, so good. I think we've had quite a few people reach out to about wanting to be guests on the podcast, which is awesome. I think you said you had some, somewhat strangers come up and say, hey, or not strangers, but just acquaintances say, listen to the podcast, and thought it was cool. So
yeah, it's great. And like we said from the beginning, the podcast is really less about you and I talking and more about us just sitting back and listening to people's stories. We've already had some great guests on, and we were just talking about before we hit record some of the stories that we can still tell about people who have already pretty much solidified a pretty solid legacy with either the disease they beat, the business they started, the family they raised, whatever it is. We've got some people we want to have in the studio to talk to. So today, though, we just it's just the two of us. We're going to sit here a little bit and try to keep it brief, but we wanted to talk today about some things that are motivating us towards leaving our legacy, and also talk about some things like specifically time management. So kick things off, we kind of want to do a segment called like kind of monthly motivation. It's been about a month since we started the podcast.
Yep.
And I think it's good that we sort of hold ourselves accountable. We can sit here with other people all the time and say, hey, what's the driving force behind what you're doing? But you and I should probably also hold ourselves accountable.
That's my biggest thing right there is I'm always out there and putting myself out there to help motivate, inspire people. And I've noticed, especially as of late, just going through some shit that I'm going through, I haven't been following through with a lot of that though. And I kind of feel a little hypocritical lately, and I finally feel like I'm getting back in the swing of things and kind of using my own shit that I'm putting out there for other people for myself, and it's starting to pay off, starting to work out. But like you said, it's kind of holding ourselves accountable. We can sit here and talk about motivating and inspiring, but what about us? Like what motivates and inspires us to come in here once a week or every other week and sit down and talk for 45 minutes to an hour and bring people in here and give them the platforms to share their story.
Yeah. So you've started documenting a little bit of your life through a vlog, right?
Vlogs, yeah.
Nice.
I don't like it too much. Matt Spencer, one of my video guys from Pittsburgh, he's been with me since day one. He's done many of our videos that we've put out. He's just a mastermind when it comes to marketing and branding. He came up with one of our first logos and our very first video we did. When we started the company back in 2015, we didn't know what direction we wanted the brand to be. We didn't have a face to the name. And it wasn't until I linked up with him, he came to ear when we filmed this video of, a young baseball player, a couple weightlifters, a skateboarder, and we really put a face to the name of Iron Empire. And that kickstarted it from there. It was like, holy shit, like we just hit something off.
Yeah.
So he can call me right now and be like, RJ, I need you to go take a dump on someone's front porch and film it, knock on their door and say whatever. And I would probably do it because whatever he would do with it would be gold, 100% gold. And he's been bugging me for at least a year now, since kind of like the TV show stuff's been going on. Hey, you need to start vlogging. You know, it's so popular on YouTube, and you know, Facebook's kind of dying off in that sense, and everyone's pushing to YouTube now. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know why. I don't have the time to. And up until recently, I finally, after enough requests too from like strangers since the show, saying we want to see more behind the scenes. What's a day in the life like for Underdog and Iron Empire and RJ and everyone else involved? So I finally said, you know what, screw it. Like, I'm going to pull a trigger. I'm going to carry a camera around on my phone and just videotape almost everything I'm doing. Almost everything.
Yeah.
And it's been fun so far. It's been a pain in my ass, but the nice thing is Matt, I mean, pretty much does everything for me. Giving him a little shout out right now. I just take videos of everything all day and just send them to him. He cuts it all together and puts it out there. So
Nice.
Yeah, so if you haven't watched any of those yet, episode 2 just went out today.
I saw that.
Next one's already, I think, done and ready to go. And I think we're going to do 2 a week we're pushing for.
Cool.
So, yeah, that's going to keep me busy now.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it is a really great way to get people a glimpse of behind the scenes, because that's what they want to see. I mean,
it is. I mean, I can sit there all day. I'm like, man, like I don't have that exciting of a life. And why would people want to watch what I do and like what happens with the store and everything? Like, nobody has time for that. And then I find myself watching dudes like Seth Feroce all day long on YouTube. Right. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm doing the exact same thing for some of these other people. Yeah. So I guess it does make sense.
I was at my in-laws recently, my brother and sister-in-law, and their kids were watching a YouTube video. And it was the dumbest thing ever, but I couldn't pull myself away from it. I could not quit watching it. It was like a family that they all sat in different rooms and they gamed together. They played like a stupid video game.
Yeah.
And they videotaped themselves playing a video game. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever, but I couldn't stop watching it.
Yep.
So it's like, for whatever reason, as humans, we're like just drawn to the behind the scenes stuff in people's lives, the silly things.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, that's awesome. You started a vlog, and yeah, I was just making a note to make sure we include those links in the podcast episode notes so people can go check those out.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then I saw something you shared on Instagram recently, as far as a nice quote, a motivational quote.
Yeah. I've shared a couple.
Got some great feedback.
Yeah.
Do you have that? I'd love you to read it so people, if they didn't see it on your Instagram feed,
let's see,
could hear it.
It's kind of longer, but I'll read it.
Yeah, go for it.
Try not to mumble. I know I mumble and stutter a little bit. Let me clear my Corona throat. All right. Yeah, I posted this, I think, like a week ago, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, sometimes I'll post stuff if they mean something to me, or, you know, it relates to my life at the time. But you never realize, like, you post on how many people out there are going through the same shit. And like, I got so many messages about it and like replies just saying like, man, I need this today. Exactly how I'm feeling. And it makes you realize, like, even when you think you're alone, you're not alone. You're all alone together, I guess, in a weird sense.
Right.
So this was definitely one of those that I think hit home for a lot of people. So it goes, some days you'll find that you are struggling with yourself. It'll seem like you have taken more steps back than you have forward. You'll find that your heart is sitting confused between two chapters and your mind is stuck between thinking back and looking forward. Sometimes it will really seem like there is a war within yourself, between you and yourself, your mind and your heart, logic and emotions. At times you may even find that you are struggling to understand yourself, to understand what you want and what it is that you are seeking. On those days, I hope you remind yourself that it's okay if you don't have everything figured out in this moment. The confusion and chaos is all part of the process of growing and maturing in life. It makes you human to break over one matter and recreate yourself through another, to lose yourself somewhere and find yourself from elsewhere. Don't be too harsh on yourself and the chaos that comes with the process of becoming. And I was like, once the word chaos, I read it and I'm like, chaos. I'm like, that's literally like, that's what I feel like my life is right now in my head. And that hit home for me. And I think that so many people feel like they've got to be perfect in life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've had multiple conversations with people over the last couple of weeks who are like, man, like, you know, I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on. I can't seem to figure this out. I'm like, listen, rule number 1, step back, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
That's it. And again, here I am giving them advice and here I'm, you know, going crazy in my head.
Convicting. Yeah.
We're all human. Like, nobody is perfect. If you expect to be perfect in every single thing that you can do in life, you're always going to fail. You're always going to be a failure to yourself. You know, I got a close friend right now single mom with 2 kids. You know, the one kid's going through some stuff, and like she's a straight grinder, 24 hours a day, and she, you know, was struggling with this and that, you know, a little bit. I'm like, listen, calm down. Like, you are doing way better than I think most people I know would be doing your shoes right now. And she's like, yeah, you know, you're right. Like, kind of sit back and realize, like, everything that you have on your plate, you know, anyone in general, you know, it's not easy even just to have a family, juggle going to the gym and work. Like, that's enough to make people go crazy and feel like they're struggling at one part of their life. So when you start adding in, you know, health problems or a business or vacations or whatever it is, like planning vacation, whatever, like something's going to give.
Yeah.
And you have to allow yourself to be able to sit back and realize, again, like you are human, you're not perfect, you're not going to master everything. And whatever you're good at, like, keep going and doing that better. Whatever you're not good at, accept that you're not going to be the best at it and just do the best you can, and that's it. If the world doesn't like it, if your spouse doesn't like it, if you're like, fuck them, who cares? Like, you're doing the best you can, and that's it. So yeah, that was one of the better quotes that I've read over the last couple months.
For sure. That's good stuff. And it's funny because you're right. People hear that and they're like, you know, I'm going through the same thing. Or you hear it and people say, thanks for sharing that. I'm going through it as well. Yesterday, about 2 nights ago, I thought to myself, like, you know, that word grind is like, our culture glorifies it, man. If you're not quote unquote grinding, then what the heck are you doing with your life? And people are always like, I'm busy and I'm hustling hard every day, you know. And I thought to myself, like, right now I hate to say the word, but I'm busy. You know, I'm doing a lot of stuff.
You're grinding.
I'm grinding, but you know, sometimes balls will drop, things will happen. Like you said, you can't be everything to everybody.
Yep.
So I realized as I was, you know, thinking through some things the other night, like, why am I doing this? And should I have said no to this person, or should I have, I need to pull back. And I was like, and this is kind of my own, I guess, quote. I'm sure somebody at some point said this, but I thought, you've got to give yourself grace when you're going through the grind. Because if you don't,
I like that.
Yeah, you've got to give yourself grace. I like the word grace, you know, in so many, like, in so many different aspects of the word, you know, from a spiritual standpoint, from a personal standpoint, even just from a relationship standpoint. Grace is like such a wide spanning word. And I'm like, I always want to give other people grace when they mess up, you know, but I'm like, I got to give myself some grace. Like, I'm going to like screw some things up, or I'm not going to be able to fulfill all these obligations or whatever. So you got to give yourself grace through the grind. And yesterday, you know, I was like, man, I'm gonna talk about this. This just hit home for me. So I have a personal podcast that I do just pretty much to vent for my own benefit. And I got in there and just started talking about it and just told people, like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm beating myself up over not being everything. And same thing. People are like, dude, I needed to hear that today because I'm trying to do all this stuff. I'm trying to raise my kids to be perfect. I'm trying to be super mom and super dad. So it's cool how when you get the courage, like you or I, to say, you know what, I'm going to admit to other people that I'm vulnerable, that I'm not perfect, that I need some grace. Other people are like, thank you for saying that, because now I feel okay about also telling you that I'm dropping some balls too, or I'm screwing up. So that was cool to hear other people's perspective, because I think so often we sort of seclude ourselves and think that we're the only ones going through it, and we're not. So yeah, giving yourself grace through the grind, you have to, because if you don't, you'll fail and you'll be so hard on yourself. And probably like you, I'm my biggest critic.
Yeah.
No one's telling me I'm not doing enough. I'm saying, I'm not doing enough and I'm screwing up.
And I feel like half the time, the negativity and the doubt, excuse me, the doubt that we have is built in our own heads. Mm-hmm. You know, I can tell you, you know, countless times throughout my life, over the last couple of years with the business, where I had this thought in my mind where, like, man, like, I keep fucking this up. Like, I'm never going to figure this out. I'm letting everyone down. And then in reality, like, once it kind of gets out there and we're talking, you know, I'm talking about it, people are like, no, like, you're actually doing fine. Like, you're doing way better than, so I think a lot of it comes with our own self-esteem or our own, you know, that's what I'm looking for, Chris. Come on.
Our own confidence.
Yeah, confidence or lack of, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is just in our heads. And again, that brings you to the point of, like, give yourself grace. Like, you have to, because if not, you're just going to burn yourself out. And the more that you mentally put yourself down, you're never going to get yourself out. And you're absolutely right. We are our own worst critics.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah, and you definitely are a kind of person that you would give someone else grace. If someone came to you and said, RJ, I dropped the ball on this order, I dropped the ball on this whatever, you would give them grace. I know
Right.
you would. You'd be like, hey, it's all good. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
I would too. But why we can't extend the same kind of empathy toward ourselves is always like the human predicament. Like, I don't know. Some people can. Some people are too easy on themselves and they don't hold themselves accountable and they don't step up when they need to.
Yep.
But it's like the opposite side of the spectrum is like, terrible self-doubt, terrible negative talk. I mean, some of the stuff I internalize in my head that I say to myself, it's disgusting. And it's like,
it is.
I'll say it sometimes out loud. My wife's like, we're both believers. And she's like, God created you. And you're saying this disgusting stuff about yourself. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I shouldn't say this stuff because it's gross. I would never say it about somebody else. So why am I saying it about myself? It's almost like it makes you feel good. It's a weird thing. But yeah, so self-doubt is certainly an issue. And we need to practice what we preach, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how you have kids in a family or a kid.
One kid, yeah.
Or you have a kid. I meant this. I don't know why.
Sometimes it feels like 10, but it's only one for now.
I was, everyone else that you work with, probably your kids.
Yep. Oh yeah.
How hard is that for you? I mean, I can't. My child is a dog, and that's kind of stressful enough. Making sure that she's getting what she needs, and I'm, spend enough time at home. But you have like real family obligations, and you're grinding. And I say grind in, not with a grinding. That's how we say it out here. How does that work for you? Those times where you are starting to get those feelings of self-doubt and like you're dropping a ball.
Yep.
And you have your business, you have a family, you have a son. How old's your son again?
3.
3. Jesus.
I know.
How do you I don't want to say fake it, but do you kind of put on that mask when you go home to your kid and be like, in your head, you're like, man, like I'm not saying you're a very negative person, but like those days that you do have that, like, or do you go home and you realize like, oh my God, like I'm stressing about this shit and here's my 3-year-old son, the best gift I've ever been given.
Right.
None of that matters. And it doesn't matter, Yeah. How does that work for you?
Well, I think it all goes back to your why. It's kind of an overused sentence. You're always like, remind yourself of your why. What's your why? What's your why? I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, hey, you got to remember what your why is. Like, share that. But like I'm thinking about trying to get everything done and I'm always like, why did you decide to leave a corporate job? Like, why did you want to start your own business? Why? And I'm always like, I think a big reason was because I'd have more freedom to make my own schedule, to hang out with my kid. And it's funny because when I first left corporate America and started my own business, I was like, Friday afternoons, don't call me. I'm hanging out with my kid. We're going to the zoo. We're going wherever. And gradually that has become less and less.
Right.
Friday afternoons, I'm working to get everything done. So I'm like, oh, now I can have Saturday and Sunday without any work like everybody else. So it is a huge struggle. But I would say I don't take work home with me. But there are times when I'm like, hey, kid, go put a movie on. I want to
Hey, kid.
Yeah. Hey, what's your name again? No, his name's Grady. But yeah, it's tough because you don't want to bring it home. Like you don't want to bring your work home. And I really don't. Because my job, I love the work I get to do, and it's really not that stressful. But I just want my son to not ever think that, like, number one, my dad was like always stressed about work. He hated his job, and he always like brought work home and didn't have time for me. So it's trying to find the right balance. It's so easy to justify work until 10 o'clock so that the next day you can have more time with your family, but it almost never works out that way.
Never works out.
You just have to be intentional about like, I close the laptop at this time and I hang out with my son from this point forward. So it is hard. It's all about priority. But for me, when I get like I lose vision of that, I think back to, okay, a year ago at this time, I was like, I need to get out of this job. But why? Well, it'd be pretty cool to hang out with my son and my family more. Okay, well then what am I doing? That's why I did this in the first place. So it all goes back to your why,
Yeah.
And I would imagine, for you, like it's similar. Like you've got a lot going on as well. I'm sure you, of all people, probably that I know, there's so many people that want some of your time. How do you delegate? Like, I have, my kid wants all of my time, but you have dozens of people like friends, people that want to be close to you because of your influence. How do you delegate all that time? Because time is currency and everybody wants a piece of it.
And that's where I was going with it is, before this, we kind of threw out that saying that time is currency, time is money, whatever. And I was going to say that to you about bringing your work home. You're like, you don't like doing that. But at the same time, when you are an entrepreneur, you own your own business, time is money.
Yeah.
The perfect example, and I'm not saying an entrepreneur, but an Uber driver.
Yeah.
Time is money. Like if you want to go out and make money, you can go out and make money.
Right.
And I mean, I feel like we can all do that with our businesses, but like if you want to go work for 5 hours, sign in and you're going to make money for 5 hours.
Yep.
And it's like, that's your choice. So sometimes, saying you don't want to take your work home, it's like, but you also want to give your family the life that you never had, or whatever your reason is, what your why is. So I want to touch base on that, is the time is currency thing, because that's absolutely true. I mean, we can work as much as we want, but if we're not putting in 100%, during those times of when, okay, well, this 40 hours a week is for work, the rest of it's personal. Well, if you're working 40 hours a week, but you're really only working 10 to 15 of those hours, and you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, like, you're never going to get by. You're going to have to find time on your off time to keep going and keep working, because it's just not going to work. I learned that over the years, obviously. But where are we going with that? Time is currency thing. I wanted to bring up, but you had a question for me. I just didn't want to forget that.
Yeah, no, I just was wondering, if time is currency, people aren't coming to you asking you for handouts and money, but they're saying, hey, RJ, can you come to this event? Can you speak here? Can we grab a dinner? Especially after the show came out. I mean, I experienced that on a smaller schedule. All of a sudden, everybody was like, hey, can you come talk here? Can you talk to my class? Can you give us a little speech or rah-rah talk about, the Undercover Billionaire show you're on? And I'm like, suddenly all these people kind of want a piece of your time.
Yep.
It's kind of like asking for your money,
that
right?
100% is.
Yeah.
There is the times, and there are the people that you never want to say like it's not worth your time, but you have to pick and choose once you get to a certain point. For example, today we're at the store and got an email overnight from some father who lives in South Carolina. His son's 22 years old and he's going through leukemia treatments right now. And was like, he's a huge fan of yours, loved the clothing. Do you think you maybe send something down to him? Like, 100%. I took a half hour out of my day. I went and got Morgan, said, hey, let's do this, figure this out, blah, blah, blah. Took a couple videos, walked around the store, and we're going to send them to him. We're actually going to post them in one of our vlogs coming out and surprise him. Got this podcast. As soon as I'm done here, I'm literally flying down to the neighborhood art house to volunteer my time for an hour. There's some kids all between, I think, the ages of 8 to 12. They're working on branding. They created their own brand, their own color palettes and logos, and they want to put whatever their brand is, whether it's a bottle of Lysol wipes, which they would be real smart right now if they're doing that, laptops, whatever, then they want to put that design onto a shirt.
That's cool.
So she asked me to come down and work with the kids one-on-one. Like, I'm going to be able to sit down and help them with their brands.
Nice.
And, I'm not getting paid for that. I would never be like, well, wait a second, that's taking an hour of my time. You owe me how much I think my time's worth. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to figure out what your vision is. Like, what are your morals? For me, working with kids, I'm supposed to go speak at Strong Vincent next week for probably an hour and a half, talk to the kids, do a Q&A and whatever. I would never ask, charge money for that. Now if we're talking about, different businesses and stuff wanting to get mentorship, at what point do you have to start monetizing your time?
Sure.
Did I use that word right?
Yeah, monetizing
your time.
I like that, actually.
Because again, your time is money. And if I wish I can just spend all day going out and volunteering and donating my time and what I do to everyone around the city or outside of the city, if my business could still make money without me around and still make a living off of it. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Right.
So, at some point you have to kind of draw that fine line of yes, sorry, I don't have the time. And I'm not very good at that right now. I'm not very good at saying no.
Oh, me neither.
But it's hard. Time management is a big thing for me. It's a struggle. I think it's always going to be a struggle. Not even time management, just staying on top of everything.
Yeah.
Everything from, even my personal life. I have, what is this called? Hold on. It's just like a reminders app I have on my phone where there's different tasks and you can break them down. So I literally have Iron Empire.
Yep.
I have an Underdog, and I have literally a personal section.
You have to. Yeah.
If in the morning I want to get my hair cut that day, I got to put in my phone.
Love it.
Remember to go get a haircut.
Love it.
Because if I don't, I'm gonna forget.
Yeah, I love it.
And so that way, like I can be driving, I could be laying in bed, and my mind is going a million miles a minute, literally until I fall asleep.
Yep.
I wake up as soon as I'm in the shower, it's going a million miles a minute thinking about my day. There's a lot of times I'll wake up in the morning and sit in the shower, and I'll just start thinking about my day. And I'll leave my phone outside, like right in the toilet, to where I can grab it. And I'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to forget. So I'll grab my phone while I'm sitting in the shower, and I'm just already doing reminders on my phone to remind myself this needs done, this needs done, this needs done. And I always check it at the end of the day, and I'm like, I didn't get half my shit done today.
I know, that's the worst.
I get pulled away for this or dragged away for that, or something comes up. So time management is a huge thing for me, especially with the two companies, with my personal life. I don't really have a way of kind of prioritizing it right now. I'm still trying to figure that out. And as things get busier, we're kind of at a slow season, I think, for both companies, the restaurant, with the location, and Iron Empire would be in retail. But we're starting to see things pick back up real quick. We're going to 0 to 100 real fast.
Good.
And good. But
more time management.
This is going to take more time management. So I'm still trying to nail that down. So if you have any suggestions, I think we're about to switch over to you. I think I'm done talking about how bad I am with time management.
No, I love your to-do list, because I'm the same way. I actually write mine down, though, because there's just something satisfying for me about that little, this sounds ridiculous. And if you're watching it on YouTube, like that little, like that check mark. I draw little squares next to my to-do list just so that I can go in there and just do that. It's the weirdest thing, but I've done the notes app too. But I think the boxes, checking those boxes at the end of the day. And you're right. If I have 10 things I want to get done and I leave 3 of them blank, I do feel empty. And I shouldn't be. I should be like, dude, you crushed 7 out of 10 of your to-do list items. Good for you. But like we talked about a little bit ago, it's I need to give myself grace and be like, you know what? That's pretty good. You're by yourself right now. You don't have a team of people really. Yeah. You got 7 out of 10 things done. Good for you. But I'm the same way. I like a to-do list. And then one thing my family implemented at the beginning of the year, which any entrepreneur, solopreneur, whoever, single parent, you can do this. We made like a guiding principles thing. I heard it on a podcast by a guy named Donald Miller, and he talked about, like, he does this for big businesses and brands, but he said at the beginning of the year, make one for your family. And I'm like, all right, why not? So it's called the guiding principles, and you basically like list out your guiding principles that you filter all your decisions through, all your time through. So before you say yes to something, before you commit to something, you go to this guiding principles and you read back those things. All right, this is what I prioritize for my family. Does it check this box? Does it check this box? Does it check this box? Yes, yes, no. I don't think I should do it then. So I'm not perfect at following it, but it's helped me and my wife every time we're asked to do something, or even I'm asked to do something. We look at this guiding principle and we say, okay, is it good for our family? Is it good for our own personal health and growth? And, does it check all these boxes? And most of the time it does. It's not like we're super stringent, but that's helped me a lot. It helped my family a lot because, again, I think it sets up some borders that most people can relate to, is like finding that balance between quality time with your family, quality time at work. If you've got something to filter through, like a guiding set of principles, that helps. So we don't make any decisions without kind of talking it through. And my wife's as busy as I am. She's going back to get her principal certificate, and like we see each other on Sundays, and then like Friday we're like, oh, hey, I remember you, so we're both busy too. But at the end of the day, we try to have like quote unquote team meetings and say, so somebody asked me to come speak at this thing. Does it pay? No. Is it worth your time? Does it meet your morals? Like you said, does it check those boxes? Actually, yeah, it does. This is for kids, or this is for a church, or this is for like a local group of people I'm passionate about. Okay, then I think I should do it. So it's good to have a partner, or at least somebody that you can bounce those ideas off of. So
for sure,
if it's not your wife, that's cool. Find your best friend, find your mentor, and say, hey, would it be cool if I develop some principles to filter all these decisions through, so I can better manage my time and get some feedback from someone on the outside looking in that's like, RJ, you're too busy. You got to say no to this. And if you're like, yeah, but I'm not good at saying no, well, then you've got those kind of guiding principles to say, all right, well, does it check these boxes, RJ? Is it about the kids? No, it's not about the kids. All right, well then, is it going to mess with your personal life? Like, Is it going to, you taking yourself away from a friend or a family member? Well, yeah, because I was supposed to go to my friend's birthday party that night. All right, dude, then you can't do it. You got to say no. All right, thanks, man. I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
For me, sometimes I just need someone to say that. Like, man, it's not worth your time. And you're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. RJ, you're right. Thanks for telling me. I should say no. And then I go to them and say, yeah, RJ told me not to do it.
RJ, blame him. Here's his email.
I was going to do it, but he said no. So, yeah, time management is huge. And, I mean, how do you think that plays out long term? Like, what's crazy is if we wanted to, and someday apps or medical contraptions will probably be able to measure, like, I wouldn't even want to know at the end of my life, like, how much time I spent doing each thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you, because I'm sure we could measure that. Like, somehow, some way, I could look when we're like on our deathbed someday. You could look at like a pie chart and be like, you spent this much time on your phone. You spent this much of your life sleeping. Because they say you spend like, what, 40% of your life like just working or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But man, it's kind of scary to think that our time is monetizable and is measurable. As we look to like our legacy and kind of the life we're living, how do you think that plays out and kind of like for you personally?
God, that's a deep question.
I know.
I was gonna throw in there too. It's kind of scary to think about. Our time is what was the word?
Monetized.
Monetized,
Sure.
Or monetizable. Is that a word? How about that?
Let's do it.
But at the same time, like, you don't get that time back.
No.
Like every second that we've been talking for 31 minutes, like those 31 minutes of our life that are gone, and we're sitting here doing something that's really we're not making money off of right now.
Right.
And that's a way to look at it, is like, man, like, how much time did I spend doing things that didn't benefit me, didn't benefit others, even if you don't want to be selfish about it, didn't make it money.
Yeah.
If you just sat around the couch for 3 hours tonight, and whether you needed it, you really needed like a mental health day to sit at home, but like really like the time management thing, like how, I don't know, like that's what gets me is you never know. You never know when you're just going to close your eyes and be done. And that's it for you.
And someday it'll happen to all of us. And
yeah,
you want to be able to look back and feel like you spent your time wisely, because it is, like you said, the most valuable thing we have. All the money in the world is great, and you can always get that back if you lose it. Like you said, if you lost $1 million, you could work your butt off to get it back. But if you lose 6-10 years of your life, whatever,
you're not getting it back.
No, that's what's crazy. People always say, making up for lost time. Well, yeah, you literally are. Like lost time that maybe you didn't spend with your family, or didn't spend taking care of yourself. Like you see that with people, like they get unhealthy or they get depressed, and it's because they didn't spend enough time on themselves. They were too busy working or trying to be somebody to everybody else, hanging with the wrong crew. I mean, time is currency, and it's super valuable.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are still, I know I am still trying to find the perfect balance.
Right. I think that goes with, leaving a legacy, is the time that we have. Like, what are we going to do with the time that we're given? And again, the scary thing is we don't know how much time that is.
Yeah.
We don't know if we're going to be around for a week, 5 years, 50 more years. You have no idea. So how do you manage and figure out right now in my life, this is what I need to do because I'm living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed.
Right.
Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And that's very fucking cliche, but that's the reality of it. So I, sometimes I do think about that, as I'm sitting there and I'm being asked to do things, or can I do this? Can I do that? Should I do this? I really think about like, man, like if this is my last day on earth, like, am I going to be happy with myself if I said yes to this that literally had no effect on me or anything or anyone around me or my business or my family or my friends? I think that's the biggest question I ask myself.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. Yeah, constantly evaluating how you're spending your time is super important, and saying yes to 10 things, as opposed to 2.
Sure, it makes you busy. I know if I wanted to, I can be a lot busier than I am, but I kind of do have somewhat good time management skills and know what's going to benefit myself, my friends, my family, my business, others around me, and I know what's going to just be a waste of my time, and no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And again, you'll figure out too, at least I know I have, what was a waste of my time. I've certainly done things in the past, year really, that I'm like, okay, mental note, that was a waste of time.
Yep.
And you're not going to get it back, Chris, but don't dwell on it.
Learn from it.
Learn from it, exactly. And know that next time you'll say no. or you'll say, you know, my time is better spent doing this. I mean, this, like you said, this podcast is sort of just for fun, but if one person, let's say we did this for 5 years and one person came back and said, I was in a dark place and then I heard Aubrey's story, or I heard C. Brown's story, or I heard RJ's story. If they come back and say, and that changed things for me, or I heard that podcast you guys talked about time management, I realized I was neglecting my daughter. That makes it worth to me
100%.
5 years of my time. You know, can somebody, some economist or whatever might say, Chris, you know, in 5 years you spent this much time doing that when you could have been over doing this and making this much money. I'd be like, yeah, that's awesome, but one person's life was changed.
Yeah.
I think it's worth all the time.
Yep.
It's like you're literally investing your money, quote unquote money, in that person because you gave them your time and you changed their life.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and I hope that's what we do.
Investing
with
your
this.
time is basically investing your money into someone.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I mean, you've mentored people. You have a lot, like you spent that time today for that kid that was going through illness. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of investment that matters.
Yeah.
Really. So time.
People to people interaction too.
Totally. Well, as you can hear, we are still learning the process, and I think that, you know, we talked before we started the podcast that we'd love to hear from you guys. Like, we'd love to know what you do, like even from a practical level. Like, what apps are you using? Are you a notepad or an iPhone app person? I mean, how do you manage your time? Some of you listening to this podcast might have 8 kids. You know, I would love to hear your perspective. RJ would love to hear your perspective. Maybe you own 10 businesses. We're always looking for feedback, and we'd like to share some of that feedback as well on the next episode. So if you would like to get in touch with us and basically help us out, give us some tips and tricks on time management, especially if you're an entrepreneur or anybody that can connect on the same level as RJ and I, hit us up on our YouTube page. You can find us youtube.com/Iron Empire. We'll post this video there. Just leave it in the comments, honestly. Just tag us and tell us what you're doing. And we'll pick some of the ones that were the most helpful, and we'll read them on the next episode.
For sure.
Yeah. And then we've been talking a little bit about upcoming guests. You want to tease any of those, RJ, that you have in mind? Or
You had a couple good ones. I mean, I had one, but we haven't reached out to him yet, so I don't want to jump the gun and
commit.
then
Yep.
yeah.
But we're excited. I think we got some good people, and I think the more we share quality content, hopefully we attract the kind of people that are like, hey, I loved what you have to say, but I have something I want to add. And that's
Yep.
what we're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah. So
sure.
If you want to be on the podcast, if you know somebody that should be on the podcast, you can email us info@leaveyourlegacypodcast.com. I think we're on Instagram these days, Leave Your Legacy Podcast. Hit us up there. We want to hear from you guys. We want to have you on the show, and we want to hear your time management tips and tricks. Looking forward to the next episode. We'll have an exclusive guest, and we'll get to know somebody else who's leaving a legacy in their world. So until next time, for RJ Messenger, I'm Chris Norris. Peace out.
Yep.